In my mind, the multi-tiered system of support, which we'll commonly refer to as MTSS, is really, it's a systematic way of taking a look at what the schools and districts are already doing very well. It's putting into it a system of the support and interventions that they're providing for the kids who need it. When I think of, the tiers, as we start describing the three tiers, or however many, because every school system can establish their own system. When I think about the very first tier, or the first level, I mean, that's the core curriculum that every district and every school implements. And every child needs to be successful, and that's the best place to start. I mean, do we have a good core curriculum that allows every child to make sure that they're meeting the standards and assessments and so forth? Then we know that there are a group of kids who that core curriculum may not just be enough and they need something more. And that's the additional support that we provide, maybe in small groups or whatever else. We also know that within those small groups of support that are provided at that next level of intervention or whatever, there are some kids who will not even be successful at that point in time. Some will catch up because we've provided the support that they needed. Then there's another group of students, those that are really at risk. And we need to provide more intense interventions than ever before. So these kids may respond to that intense intervention, or some of these kids may ultimately be in need of special education services. So when I think about what the multi-tiered system of support, it's just a way of looking at and providing what any child may need to be successful, regardless of label. I often talk about kids are disadvantaged, they're disabled, they're disengaged, they're disenfranchised. It doesn't make any difference what they're labeled. What level of support and intervention do they need to be successful? I think it's critically important. We know, and I applaud the schools and the districts and so forth, because especially in Kansas. I mean, we are still in the top 10 in terms of how well our kids perform across the nation. And it's because the educators and administrators and so forth, and the parents and the students themselves really put all their effort that they can into learning, because they really know that education is critically important. In terms of looking at this as part of the system, what it's really doing is it's providing a systemic approach to how we can ensure every child learns. And it tends to be the kids who live in poverty who tend to be so far behind. And they enter school far behind because they haven't been exposed to words, and they just don't read as well as some others. So when I take a look at this support system, it finally blends a system of education, special education, general education, whatever it is. We are a system of education, regardless of where the funding may come from. And for the first time, this type of a system really allows us to work together to provide what's needed. Well, they have to start planning first. And I mean, it's really getting everyone on board to determine where they need to start and where they want to go. When I think about it, and you think of MTSS and what's referred to as response to intervention and so forth, it's not going to look alike. There is no one model, there is no one strategy. What it really starts with are the people in the schools themselves determining what is it that we need. What do our kids look like, and what do they need in order to be successful? So, when I think about what it may look like in the future, it may be as different from one school to another. However, what we do know is that it will provide the support and interventions that any child needs. So, I mean, starting, they need a dialogue. They need to get together and talk about what it is that they might need to implement within their school, taking a look at all the good things they already do, because they don't have to change anything necessarily, not unless they think the core curriculum may need to be enhanced or expanded. And all they're doing is basically systematizing probably all the good work that they're already doing. And it just gives them a means to an end to make sure that every child is basically caught and provided what they needed. This has the potential to really change the way schools operate. And I'm only saying that schools already do an excellent job. But what it does is it allows them to make sure that every child really and truly will be successful. It is the intent of No Child Left Behind. And the whole purpose is that we want to help any child be as successful as he or she possibly can be. And what this allows is the use of resources, whether it's funding from IDEA or whether it's NCLB or whatever. It really allows us to work together to really provide what any child may need. And I really believe it has the potential to change the face of education across the whole country, and not just here. And the one thing that Kansas has as an advantage is that we really started doing that in the mid-90s. We were one of the first states that really took a look at a problem-solving approach to identifying kids as in need of special education, and taking a look and intervening and providing those resources long before they failed. You know, it's been too long that we had to wait for a child to fail, and this really, I believe, has the potential to change everything that we do. The one thing I usually throw in here is that under IDEA, for the very first time, there is the possibility of $1.5 billion in there to use specifically to provide these interventions, what's referred to as early intervening services. And this is the first time that special ed dollars have been allowed to be used for students not yet identified as in need of special ed. Talk about taking a look at a system of education. I mean, I really think that's been, it's across the country. And I think Kansas can be one of the premier states in terms of looking at it on a statewide basis. To me, it's making things available, just in time or whenever, so that someone has availability 24/7 if that's what they want. It's going to put together the support systems that allow a school to begin to have the dialogue that's necessary. For instance, it really starts with what do they really believe. What is their belief system behind that? What are the principles under which they need to operate? And then to provide them with some of the materials and resources that will allow them to ask the questions that need to be answered, and send them to different places. There are a wealth of resources that are already available across the United States about whether we refer to it as response to intervention, but just the tools and the methods and the strategies and the evidence-based practices that once you determine that some kids need these interventions, then what do you provide? And this is basically going to be like a one-stop shop that will allow them to access any of the materials that are already out there.